This week on Christian World News, assault on Armenia. The world's oldest Christian nation, one of them at least, is under attack. What role is Turkey playing? And could this conflict grow into a regional war?
Plus, Christians and COVID-19 as the virus infects a number of Christian leaders. One of them calls on the church to respond in faith, not fear.
And on a mission to save lives, this woman volunteered to take part in a COVID vaccine trial. She says a divine conviction inspired her to act. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Well, it's a little-known conflict that could have big-time consequences. Armenia and Azerbaijan are fighting over a small territory, and it could turn into all-out war, George.
Yeah, guess what? The Islamic nation of Turkey is fueling the fire as well, and tens of thousands of Christians are caught in the crosshairs. Recently, I spoke with the president of Armenia about the dangers. Take a look.
The decades-old conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the contested region of Nagorno-Karabakh is threatening to erupt into a wider conflict, including Russia, Turkey, and radical Islamic jihadists. Turkey is reportedly recruiting hundreds of Syrian mercenaries to join Azerbaijan's army in the fight against Armenia.
Mr. President, can you confirm these reports, and what are the implications of their involvement?
Well, first of all, I can confirm it's not only confirmation from my side. International organizations and even intelligence departments of different states have confirmed that.
In an exclusive interview with CBN News, Armenia's President Arman Sarkisian accused Turkey and its leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan of being a bully and making the crisis worse. Turkey has deployed drones and reportedly sold more than $123 million worth of military hardware to support Azerbaijan.
What are the consequences, Mr. President, of not stopping Turkey's involvement in this conflict?
Well, not stopping Turkey in this conflict, you will get another Syria, but 10 times bigger.
President Sarkisian points to Turkey's ongoing military involvements in Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan as more proof of Erdogan's expansionist ambitions.
Wherever they go, alone or bringing Islamic militants with them, basically they are there and they are destroying not only people's lives, but also ancient languages. As I said, like in Syria, destroying ancient Christian culture.
On October 7th, days after the conflict erupted, Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey, shelled this historic cathedral where many Armenian families had sought refuge. 3 weeks into the conflict, scores of families continued to pray and find refuge in the partially destroyed church.
God's house was transformed into ruins. They are capable of everything, but God will punish them.
More than 500 people have died and tens of thousands of civilians displaced by the fighting. Sandwiched between Armenia and Azerbaijan, Nagorno-Karabakh's ethnic Armenian population has long wanted to be independent to unite with Armenia. After numerous flare-ups over the region, this latest is the worst in decades. Russia, which backs Armenia but has ties with Azerbaijan, tried to broker a ceasefire last week. That failed. As fighting intensifies, experts worry Russia could be dragged further into the conflict. Russia's foreign ministry making a fresh appeal for peace late Wednesday.
We stand on our position that peaceful solution of the conflict is possible. Moreover, it's the only way to ensure sustainable solution of this problem.
Armenia is one of the world's oldest Christian nations. The majority of those living in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region are also Christian. That includes Rita Grigorian, who, along with several others, has sheltered in the basement of this apartment building since fighting started. Grigorian lost her husband during the war with Azerbaijan in the 1990s. Her son-in-law and grandson are now on the front lines.
My grandson turned 20 and then the war started. How can we be happy? Where should we run if my relatives are here?
President Sarkisian tells CBN News that Armenia's struggle against what his government has called a Turkish-Azerbaijani terrorist alliance is similar to that of a story in the Bible.
So these brave people are like the story of the David and the Goliath. They are facing an enormous enemy that wants to destroy a whole civilization, a culture, religion, and people.
Joining us now is CBN Middle East correspondent Chris Mitchell. Chris, we've seen Turkey go on the offensive in northern Syria. What do you think their agenda is?
Well, Wendy, I think their agenda is sort of a greater Turkey, this neo-Ottoman empire, where President Erdogan sees himself as a sultan or as the new caliph. We've seen that in many places. Particularly, we saw it in 2018 in a place called Afrin. This is northwestern Syria. And actually, he used sort of Islamist shock troops to go in there ahead of the Turkish army. And that's sort of his modus operandi right now. He did that in Afrin. He's also doing that, apparently, right there in this conflict with Armenia and Azerbaijan. So Afrin was really sort of one of the first things he's done in the last few years as he expanded. We've seen that in Libya. We've seen it in northeast Syria. Now we're seeing it in Armenia and Azerbaijan. And all sign, I think, Wendy, of his attempts to just expand Turkey as it is today.
Chris, so many Christians in these areas. We've seen these beautiful churches now in rubble. What happens to the Christians in these areas that Turkey controls?
Well, they leave, Wendy. That's simple as that. They flee for their lives, literally. And if they stay, they're putting their lives at risk. We saw that in Afrin. We also saw that remarkably in October of last year, just about a year ago, when Turkey invaded northeast Syria. Many of those Christians, many of those areas right along the border between Syria and Turkey were Christian villages. Many of them literally fled for their lives. And we see this anti-Christian sentiment in Turkey in many ways. We see it when Pastor Brunson, notably a few years ago, was in prison. Thankfully, he was released. But we also see that many missionaries in Turkey are becoming persona non grata and having to leave the country. We've seen it symbolically when he turned Hagia Sophia into a mosque. And in all these areas, the expansionist ideas of Erdogan. And Wendy, we've also seen it here in Jerusalem. He says that Jerusalem is theirs. So that gives you an idea of how far he wants to go.
Wow, I had not heard that. Well, there's talk of this war expanding, Chris. Some say it could even be part of biblical prophecy. Tell us about this.
Well, a lot of people, when they think of Turkey, they look at Ezekiel 38, 39, and they talk about the war of Gog and Magog. And we see a couple of things happening dynamically and perhaps prophetically here in the Middle East. The first thing is the Abraham Accords, this idea that Israel is making peace with many of its Sunni Arab nations. That seems to fit the biblical blueprint there in Ezekiel 38 and 39, where many of these nations are at peace with Israel. And on the other hand, you see this confederation of nations like Turkey and possibly Iran, which is modern-day Persia, aligning against Israel. So it seems like the chess pieces, if you're looking at things from a biblical prophetic view, might be aligning.
Chris Mitchell in Jerusalem. Great to see you, Chris. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Wendy.
George?
Coming up, Christian leaders call on the church to respond in faith. And this woman puts her own health on the line to fight the coronavirus.
These are times of warfare. You go into the strong tower when you're under attack.
CBN presents The Name of God, the latest teaching by Gordon Robertson.
God has given you the right to carry his name. That is life-changing.
Discover the peace, healing, provision, and protection that can be found in the Lord's name. Plus,
you are going to see some tremendous real-life stories of people who have seen firsthand what trusting in the name of God can do.
The thought of losing Noah was one of the most terrifying things I've ever walked through.
I could hear my house being shredded, and I heard my wife screaming over the phone.
I knew that God didn't lie to me. I knew that God didn't forget about me.
This is God's promise. This is the way. This is the answer. Go into that strong tower.
Get your DVD copy of The Name of God today. Call now or go to cbn.com.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30. As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
President Trump talked about his recovery from the coronavirus on the campaign trail last week. He said while people should take all necessary precautions, we still need help from God.
Masks, no masks, everything, you can do all you want, but you still need help from the boss. We need help from the boss. That's what happened. We need help. Somebody said to me the other day, "You're the most famous person in the world by far." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." They said, "Yes, you are." I said, "No." They said, "Who's more famous?" I said, "Jesus Christ."
The president's bout with COVID-19 intensifies the fact that we're still in the middle of a pandemic and just about anyone can get it. John Jessup takes a look at how the disease is activating people of faith.
So we give you all the praise and we give you all the glory.
The Apostle Paul encouraged New Testament believers not to be anxious, but to pray.
I just want to thank everybody for all your prayers, though, because it really has been an incredible period of time.
It's one way Christians have been waging a fight against the coronavirus. For others, the battle is personal.
Well, I did contract coronavirus back in July.
Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council tells CBN News the virus hit his entire family last summer.
My daughter's actually an ER nurse working with the coronavirus patient, so we're not sure if maybe that's where it came from or through traveling.
His symptoms lasted about 2 weeks, and a recent test reflected he now has COVID antibodies.
It's actually as a part of John, the defense of this for the broader society is people get this, they become barriers to the spread of it.
Perkins attended last month's White House Rose Garden ceremony, now labeled a super spreader event, seated 2 people away from former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who, along with the president, First Lady, and several others, contracted the virus.
You may have heard that I've tested positive for COVID-19.
Also there, Harvest Christian Fellowship pastor Greg Laurie, who made this impassioned plea in a video he sent to CBN News.
I just wish at a time like this we could not politicize something like this and show compassion to people that are struggling with this. It's real.
Perkins and others now say it's time for the church to go on the offensive.
This is a moment for us where we need to be leading, and quite frankly, I don't think we've done a really good job of it. Again, I understand this is serious. I understand people have died from this, but people have died from other things. We live in a dangerous world. We cannot hide. We have to stand with common sense, taking the necessary precautions.
At a recent rally called Freedom Sunday, Christian leaders urged fellow believers to choose faith over fear and to take a stand and resume in-person worship.
We cherish the church's right in America to gather.
But how many know that we've been essential for 2,000 years? And all the more with the pandemic, we need to be the first responders as believers.
A practice that pits public safety against the First Amendment right to worship, now being challenged in the courts. Still, to the faithful, prayer is an indispensable weapon in the fight against COVID, also affecting San Antonio pastor John Hagee, who didn't attend the Rose Garden event, but was at the White House earlier.
As it is a reality in our lives, we also have a promise that we serve a God who is a healer.
Prayer, an effective tool people of faith see as a line of defense. John Jessup, CBN News.
Thanks, John. Well, COVID-19 is revealing faith and courage in many ordinary people. In Savannah, Georgia, one news anchor steps outside her comfort zone to fight the virus.
Dawn Baker became the first volunteer to participate in Phase 3 vaccine trial. CBN's Eric Phillips spoke to her about the role her faith played in making this big decision.
Dawn Baker did not enter this lightly. After extensive research and talks with her doctor, she decided joining this fight was bigger than herself.
Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Dawn Baker is a longtime anchor with WTOC in Savannah, Georgia.
According to the National Weather Service.
And instead of just reading the news, Baker made news of her own this past summer.
I feel God in this for me. So I haven't had any regrets. I've been doing great.
The shot regimen consisted of 2 doses, the first one back in July, which led to some soreness in her arm, and another unexpected but positive reaction.
All of a sudden, I got a sudden burst of energy. So about 6 weeks, I was just cleaning my house and getting caught up on all the chores and things that I had not felt like doing in the past.
The second shot came about a month later.
I had a mild headache that lasted until about 12 o'clock the next morning. But after that, I was back to normal.
Well worth it, Baker adds, to be part of the solution to this deadly problem.
I know 3 people who have passed away. It hurt even deeper. Of course, there's no cure for COVID-19, just like there's no cure for the flu, but it is going to make it less likely. Hopefully, it will pump up that immune system so that if we were to come in contact with COVID-19, we'd be less likely to get it. Or if we did get it, it will be a milder case of it.
We will deliver a safe and effective vaccine before the end of the year, and it could be very, very soon.
I don't believe there'll be a vaccine released this year. That just kind of seems like some magical fairy story to me. My prayer is always that we can stay the course, follow all the rules, and somehow get this vaccine to people in a timely manner.
While Baker has gotten a lot of support for her efforts, she has also faced criticism for putting her health at risk and even trusting the process, especially as an African American. Some have brought up the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, a 40-year government study that impacted hundreds of Black men.
I understand the fear. I know the history. I know about the Tuskegee experiment, which was absolutely brutal and lasted 40 years in this country. And even worse, after they experimented on those Black men, once the cure came out, they wouldn't even give them the cure. I would not have just gone to sign up to do this.
Her doctor of more than 30 years is overseeing trials in her area and asked Baker to take part.
My first question, like everybody else, was, is this a live vaccine? He said no. So, well, am I going to be more likely to get COVID-19 if I take this vaccine? He said no. So would we rather be scared and just worry and talk about losing our loved ones and the fact that we could not go to the funeral or go to the hospital and see them? Or do we want to be a part of fixing the problem? And I feel as if this is how we're going to save our people. And when I say our, I mean people of all races.
She's also gotten pushback from anti-vaxxers.
I don't feel that nothing I can say or it's my job to try to change perceptions that are so deep and so personal. Because we're all in charge of our own bodies and our destiny. But I do know that for us to get out of this, at least a large percentage of us are going to need to get the vaccine. Because even with the vaccine, if we get a handful of us taking the vaccine and the rest of the world isn't, we're still going to be stuck in these masks in order to be safe.
Pointing out that African Americans are among those highest at risk, Baker says the trust in her doctor, paired with a divine conviction, prompted her to roll up her sleeve.
This girl is on a mission to try to save lives. I really am just honestly praying for the whole world.
I should point out that Baker does not know whether she received the vaccine or a placebo. Over the next 2 years, she will have 7 doctor's appointments and 24 phone calls as doctors monitor and document the status of her health. In Washington, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thanks, Eric. Coming up, in recent months, we've seen historic peace deals in the Middle East. Could another peace deal be coming? That story when we come back.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists. David Brody.
That could be the next step in this escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Robert Mueller chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
He's asking Christians to get the word out.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
Get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation. Weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
The Name of God, a new teaching from Gordon Robertson.
The name of the Lord is a strong tower.
Gain important insights into the protection available to you in the name of God. Discover how God is our healer, our provider, and the one who gives us peace. Plus, see exciting true stories of God's providence in the lives of real people.
You get the answer to everything, and that answer will never leave you.
The Name of God, available now.
Welcome back to the broadcast. After the historic treaty between the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Israel, many think Saudi Arabia could be the next Arab country to normalize relations with the Jewish state.
Yeah, Emily Jones has that story and more from Jerusalem.
Welcome to Jerusalem for this Inside Israel report, where we show you what's happening in Israel and the Middle East. Israel's second wave of the coronavirus seems to be slowing down after 4 weeks of lockdown. The country's infection rate has dropped dramatically from 9,000 new cases per day to about 2,000 cases. The government will begin easing restrictions, but leaders say it will likely take months before life is back to normal. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is helping the nation's overloaded healthcare system and recently converted a hospital parking garage in northern Israel into a first-of-its-kind COVID ward.
The purpose of the operation is to assist the state of Israel in dealing with the coronavirus. We are actually generating more hospital beds.
More than 299,000 people have been infected in Israel, and over 2,000 have died. Israel recently signed historic diplomatic deals with United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Now many are wondering if Saudi Arabia could be the next to join the Abraham Accords. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with his Saudi counterpart and urged the kingdom to normalize ties with Israel this week.
We hope Saudi Arabia will consider normalizing its relationships as well. We want to thank them for the assistance they've had in the success of the Abraham Accords so far.
The Saudi kingdom has publicly expressed frustration with the Palestinian leaders and recently opened their airspace for Israeli airliners.
I think that we are actually trending towards a dramatic development, a normalization, a full peace treaty between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the state of Israel. I know that for many that seems premature and it seems even far-fetched. I think that is absolutely going to happen.
Experts say it may take some time for the kingdom to warm up to full normalization. And as the birthplace of Islam and home of Islam's holiest sites, it must consider how a peace treaty could impact the broader Muslim world. Israeli archaeologists uncovered an ancient limestone weight dating back to the time when Solomon's temple stood in Jerusalem. The weight on your screen right now corresponds to the measurement of 2 shekalim and was found close to the western wall in Jerusalem. The shekel weight system was used during the First Temple period to collect annual taxes used for the maintenance of the temple and sacrifices. They were also used for food and other commodities. For more stories like this, you can watch our Jerusalem Dateline program at cbnnews.com. Back to you.
Thanks, Emily. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, great.
Well, the power of story, how an animated Bible tale changed a young girl's life.
That story when we come back. Stick around, folks.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, you know, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Some trust in chariots, some trust in horses, but we will trust in the name of the Lord our God. CBN presents the name of God. Jehovah Shalom.
The Lord is our peace.
Jehovah Yireh.
The Lord will provide.
Jehovah Shammah.
The Lord is there.
Jehovah Rapha.
The Lord who heals.
Jehovah Sidkenu.
The Lord our righteousness.
You'll be encouraged by Gordon Robertson's teaching on the name of God.
God has given you the right to carry his name.
Plus, you'll see exciting true stories of God's providence in the lives of real people.
I could hear my house being shredded when I heard my wife screaming.
I knew something was seriously wrong with him, and it was worse than we had thought.
Become a CBN partner and get your copy of The Name of God. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com.
Vanita's mother was Christian and her grandmother was Buddhist, but neither of them talked much about their faith.
One day, Vanita asked her mom to take her to church. Well, that experience changed her life, and it's starting to change her family. Take a look.
Vanita grew up in a Buddhist household in Indonesia. Her mom, Lily, was Christian, but didn't practice her faith.
We lived with my mother-in-law, and I didn't want to have a conflict with her or my husband over religion.
Then one day, Lily decided to go to church again. Vanita wondered where her mom was going.
My parents never shared about God.
The next Sunday, Vanita asked if she could go to church too. That's when she saw a superbook for the first time.
When I watched the story of Moses, I learned that God has great power. He can split the sea and help all of the suffering people to escape.
At the end of the episode, Vanita's teacher told the class that Jesus had died for their sins. Vanita prayed to become a Christian that day.
Before I heard about Jesus, I didn't know that he could save me, but he did. Jesus has changed me and made me a better person.
Vanita then invited her older sister to church, and she became a Christian too.
I now pray for my dad and my brother so they know about Jesus and can be Christians too. Thank you very much, Superbook, for teaching me about him.
I love that.
Awesome. Superbook continuing to change lives around the world, millions of them. The young generation, telling them about Jesus.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Christian World News. Until next week, from all of us, goodbye and
God bless.